Tom Aspinall recently knocked out Sergey Pavlovich in the first round to become the interim heavyweight champion, and I believe this guy would beat any heavyweight in his path. So I'm here to matchmake the heavyweight division to make this guy into a star because I don't believe he is getting the recognition that he deserves. I want to start out this video by noting I don't think Stipe Miocic or Jon Jones will ever end up fighting the interim champion, whether it's Tom Aspinall or someone else, because I believe they're looking to retire after their next fight. If Jon Jones wins, he's going to look to retire on his high horse, and if Stipe Miocic wins, he'll probably retire just because he is old. There might be an immediate rematch clause if Stipe Miocic does defeat Jon Jones. But outside of that, both of these guys are going to retire, and I don't view them as a part of the heavyweight division until they end up expressing interest in fighting the interim champion. So what we're going to do is we're going to capitalize on this. I think Tom Aspinall, his next opponent, needs to be on the co-main event of Stipe Miocic versus Jon Jones because there is a lot of hype around that fight. And by putting Tom Aspinall in the co-main event of this fight, you are immediately putting him into conversations with fighting the winner and how he would match up with Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic, which in my opinion, he would be able to squash either one in the first round. Look, Tom Aspinall, I think, would beat anyone in the current heavyweight division in the first round more than likely. He has fantastic hands, and I think Sergey Pavlovich was arguably his hardest matchup in the entire division. And when you look at the other fighters in the division, I think they're just going to be easy pickings for him. First, we need to make a title elimination bout, and in my opinion, this should be Jailton Almeida versus Ciryl Gane. I know it's not the greatest matchup because we don't want to see Ciryl Gane try for the title the third time in his career. I understand. And Jailton Almeida didn't come off a very impressive performance against Derek Lewis. I understand that neither one of these guys arguably should be in a title elimination bout, but it makes sense promotionally, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because Jon Jones beats Ciryl Gane. And if Jailton Almeida beats Ciryl Gane, I think he could do it in a similarly very dominant fashion to Jon Jones, and you can now market him as the new, greatest, up-and-coming prospect. He could probably submit Ciryl Gane or TKO him in round one, and if he doesn't do that, if he wins, he's likely going to dominate him for 5 rounds, take him down, and make Ciryl Gane look very silly. And a lot of people are going to put some hype on his name. And if Ciryl Gane wins, he's probably going to be able to stuff the takedowns and TKO him on the feet, and you can now market Ciryl Gane as the new and improved version as compared to when he fought Jones and Francis Ngannou all the times earlier in his career. So now you have Ciryl Gane, the greatest Ciryl Gane, taking on Tom Aspinall. How is this going to play out, especially if he keeps it on the feet? We'll see how it plays out. I do believe Tom Aspinall will be able to take down Ciryl Gane, submit him, or TKO him on the ground, or even knock him out on the feet. I think Tom Aspinall is that good. I'm not going to doubt him against anyone in the entire division. I think he already beat the toughest matchup in the entire division, and that's Sergey Pavlovich. I thought Sergey Pavlovich was going to be able to stuff the takedowns and knock him out on the feet, and he just knocked Sergey Pavlovich out on the feet without even shooting or even feinting a takedown. Tom Aspinall is him, as they say, right? He has the aura. He gained the aura. I don't know how you say it, but Tom Aspinall genuinely will be able to run through anyone in the first round. I think in a rematch, I'm taking him over Sergey Pavlovich, seeing that he has the hands to go with the grappling, that he can stun Sergey Pavlovich, and Sergey Pavlovich will be definitely a little bit more patient, a little bit more cautious, and seeing how fast Tom Aspinall's hands, I don't think that will really work out all that well for him. Getting back to why I think Jailton Almeida versus Ciryl Gane winner will be so promotable for the Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic card is because if Jailton Almeida goes through Ciryl Gane, they're going to have Jailton Almeida be a little bit compared to Jon Jones, especially in the grappling, and I think this is even an easier matchup for Tom Aspinall where he'll be able to stuff the takedowns, take it down to the ground. If he does get taken down, I don't think he's getting submitted. Jailton Almeida couldn't submit Derek Lewis, and as we all know, it's just clear to see Tom Aspinall has much better jiu-jitsu, much better submissions, and he probably has better wrestling defense than Derek Lewis as well. And to also note, he's a 5 times better striker, and if this is on the feet, he is knocking out Jailton Almeida with ease, and Jailton Almeida doesn't have power at all, and his striking is untested. So let's say Tom Aspinall goes out there, finishes Ciryl Gane or Jailton Almeida easy as the interim champion. Everyone's going to be thinking, well, is the interim champion going to fight the heavyweight champion? And then Jon Jones retires, and now you can push the narrative, Jon Jones ducked Tom Aspinall, which arguably is true, right? Why would Jon Jones not take on the interim champion? Why is Stipe Miocic, the old decaying sack of flesh, getting the title shot? How is this possible, by the way? I don't understand it. I kind of hate that they made the interim champion belt when it really is the vacant heavyweight belt because Jon Jones, as we all know, is retiring. Same thing with Stipe Miocic. They're retiring. It's so clear to see. They've said it in all of their interviews. And if Jon Jones really wanted to fight Tom Aspinall, he would have said something by now. He would have said, yeah, after I beat Stipe Miocic, then I'm going to take on Tom Aspinall. He's going to start building up that fight, but it hasn't happened. So put Tom Aspinall in the co-main event. Make it seem like Jon Jones is ducking him, and make the casual fans that tuned in for Jon Jones be very interested in a potential matchup with Tom Aspinall, the new up-and-coming surging contender that is just making everyone look very stupid, making everyone look horrible because he is just that good. He's embarrassing Pavlovich. He's going to embarrass Almeida or Gane, and he'll embarrass his next opponent, which I will get to in just one moment. I want to talk about the timeline. I think Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic is probably going to happen somewhere in between UFC 301 to UFC 305, which is 8 to 12 months from now, which is when we've heard that's going to be when Jon Jones is ready to return. So this is kind of how I'm structuring it. I think one title elimination bout would make the most sense, because if you do two, where you could potentially do a Curtis Blades versus a Jailton Almeida, and then the winner takes on Ciryl Gane, you run the risk of a Jailton Almeida or a Curtis Blades getting an injury in that fight and not being able to turn around and fight Ciryl Gane. So I just say, let Almeida have the jump up against a Ciryl Gane. There's a decent amount of hype behind that fight. And like I said, the winner is very promotable, especially if they're on the co-main event against the interim champion on the same night as Jon Jones taking on Stipe Miocic, which is a very massive card. And it will bring a lot of spotlight to Tom Aspinall amongst the casual fans, in my opinion. So his next opponent, how do we find that? Very fair, because the heavyweight division really isn't all that deep, and there aren't that many deserving contenders, to be fair. So what we're going to do is Curtis Blades versus Alexander Volkov. I know it's not very interesting, but in my opinion, it needs to happen, because we kind of need two fights in the meantime for this to happen. And I would like kind of the title elimination bout to be on the same card as the Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic, because it would build up Tom Aspinall's next opponent. Like I'm saying, I'm a big believer in creating these moments, creating these moments at the press conference and creating discussions amongst the fighters on the same time that their potential next rival is on. Similarly to how I think, okay, I'll use this as an example. When Sean O'Malley faced off against Cody Garbrandt, which I don't think Tom Aspinall and Volkov are going to face off at the same press conference, but they're going to be thrown in the same hat. But I think how Sean O'Malley was on the same press conference with Cody Garbrandt, talking a little bit of shit or getting a question or two about it, just really does promote the fight, does kind of just ring the bell in the casual fan's mind, like, oh, that is a potential matchup that could happen. So we do Blades versus Volkov, maybe a fight night main event or just somewhere on a pay-per-view, and then the winner will be in the position to potentially get a title elimination bout versus the winner of Sergey Pavlovich versus Sergey Spivak. I know Sergey Pavlovich is going to run through Sergey Spivak, and you guys are probably going to say, I want to see Sergey Spivak dead. Well, kind of, I guess. I think we just need Sergey Pavlovich coming off a win so he can have some momentum and then potentially be there for a title elimination bout, because if we're being honest, Sergey Pavlovich is the most interesting matchup, more than likely, for Tom Aspinall. And I do believe Tom Aspinall, for every single other matchup in the division, outside of maybe a Curtis Blades as well, in all fairness, would just run through him. And it really is not a tough matchup for him at all. I'd say against Jailton Almeida, I'd probably give him a 75% chance of winning. Against Ciryl Gane, if he's able to run through Jailton Almeida, stuff the takedowns from Jailton Almeida, I'd probably give Tom Aspinall a 70% chance of winning. And then against Curtis Blades, probably 65% chance of winning. And then a Sergey Pavlovich, I'd probably give him a 60% chance of winning if Pavlovich can run through Sergey Spivak, and then the winner of Blades versus Volkov. But even then, we've already seen Blades fight Sergey Pavlovich, so if Blades wins, I would like him to take on maybe the loser of Gane versus Almeida, or the loser of Gane/Almeida winner versus Tom Aspinall. And then from there, Blades can get a title shot, and you can kind of sell Blades versus Aspinall, because in the first fight, Tom Aspinall got injured in that fight, and that was looking like it was going to be a super, super fun fight, where we were going to see two heavyweights go out there and bang, and one of them was going to get knocked out in round one. That's what it was looking like. That's what Tom Aspinall was going out there to do, and I was super excited for it. Really sad that it ended early, but you can promote a second fight amongst them, especially if you get Curtis Blades coming off some momentum. You just need contenders for Tom Aspinall. Make the heavyweight division be active. So what I'm saying here, Curtis Blades versus Volkov, winner, probably Curtis Blades, unfortunately. But in the best case scenario, you do Volkov as the winner, and then you can do Sergey Spivak versus Alexander Volkov as the as the featured fight of Stipe Miocic versus Jon Jones, and then the winner of that will take on the interim champion, Tom Aspinall, after he beats Almeida versus Gane. I think that makes a lot of sense for the timeline of it. You have Sergey Pavlovich coming off 2 wins. I think him versus Alexander Volkov will be very, very interesting. I think Alexander Volkov is being massively underrated. He has style matchups that he can win in this division. I think against Sergey Pavlovich, that is a matchup he can win for sure. I would love to see Volkov versus Pavlovich next, but the problem is the winner of that, then they have to find the next opponent, which is kind of weird because the heavyweight division really isn't all that deep, and there aren't that many fighters coming off of wins. But Pavlovich versus Volkov is a fight I am very, very interested in, and in a perfect scenario, Alexander Volkov can somehow edge out a victory over Curtis Blades, and then we can put him on the feature fight of Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic, and then that would be Tom Aspinall's next opponent. And potentially by putting it on the same card, you can just, once again, like I said, have the names thrown up in the air, and then casual fans will know what to look for next, and there will be some conversation up in the air as well, especially if Sergey Pavlovich wins. That's another great scenario because Sergey Pavlovich will probably knock out Alexander Volkov and make it look very brutal. And just based off of his performances alone, he is very promotable in his own right. To summarize this video, I'll be having Tom Aspinall taking on the winner of Jailton Almeida versus Ciryl Gane in the co-main event of Stipe Miocic versus Jon Jones, and the winner of that will likely retire, making Tom Aspinall the new and true heavyweight champion of the world. And then for his next matchup after that, I would like it to be one of 3 opponents, which would be Sergey Pavlovich, Curtis Blaydes, or Alexander Volkov. And the way that I'm going to have that happen is by making Sergey Pavlovich versus Sergey Spivak, and I do believe Sergey Pavlovich would win that. I have a lot of confidence that he would. And then if Alexander Volkov beats Curtis Blaydes in a matchup, I'll have Alexander Volkov versus Sergey Pavlovich for a title shot on the feature fight of Stipe Miocic versus Jon Jones. And then if Curtis Blaydes beats Alexander Volkov, we'll have Curtis Blaydes versus the loser of Jailton Almeida versus Ciryl Gane on the feature fight of Stipe Miocic versus Jon Jones as well. And I think Curtis Blaydes would beat either Jailton Almeida or Ciryl Gane, especially if they're coming off a loss, because if Jailton Almeida is coming off a loss against Ciryl Gane, that means his takedowns really aren't all that good. And I truly do believe, even right now, if the matchup happened, that Curtis Blaydes would beat Jailton Almeida because he's the bigger guy, he's a pretty solid wrestler, and I believe he has the better stand-up. He's a lot more power, and he just clearly is the bigger guy. He would be able to stuff the takedowns and knock him out on the feet. And if Ciryl Gane loses, it's very clear that he would still have that hole in his grappling game, and I believe that Curtis Blaydes would be able to beat that version of Ciryl Gane, and then if he wins that, he'll get a title shot versus Tom Aspinall. And then after that, you could do Sergey Pavlovich versus the loser of the winner of Almeida versus Gane versus Aspinall, if that makes sense. So let's say Ciryl Gane goes out there, beats Jailton Almeida, and then he fights Tom Aspinall and then loses. Then it would be Gane versus Pavlovich, and if Pavlovich beats Gane, from there, Pavlovich would get a title shot. That's how I think you can matchmake the heavyweight division to make Tom Aspinall a star and really just not make it a mess, because there are some fun matchups that you can do, and I think this is the way that you should do it so that you can build a timeline and make the heavyweight division interesting for at least 1 more year to 2 years as well, and hopefully we can get some new prospects that can really make this division even more exciting. With that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.